Have you ever felt that tightness in your throat, that burning sensation behind your eyes, that pressure building in your chest, but instead of letting the tears fall, you swallowed them back down? Maybe you've been in a meeting when someone's words stung deeper than they should have. Or perhaps you were sitting across from someone you love, feeling completely misunderstood, but you kept your face perfectly composed. The tears were right there, just beneath the surface, but you wouldn't let them break through. If this sounds familiar, you're not alone. And contrary to what you might believe, this isn't just about being strong or having self-control. The psychology behind people who hold their tears reveals something far more complex and far more profound about how you navigate the world. Because here's what most people don't understand. Holding back tears isn't the same as not feeling. In fact, it might mean you're feeling everything. You've just learned to contain an ocean in a teacup. So if you've ever wondered why you can't just let it out like others seem to do so easily, or if you've been told you're emotionally unavailable when the truth is you're drowning inside, this is for you. Let's talk about what's actually happening in your brain when you hold back tears. When emotional pain hits, your limbic system, specifically your amygdala, signals distress. Your body prepares to cry as a natural release mechanism. Tears are meant to flush out stress hormones like cortisol and leucine and enkephalin. It's your nervous system's reset button. But for some people, there's an override system in place. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for executive control, steps in like a security guard, saying, "Not here, not now, not safe." And here's where it gets fascinating. This override didn't appear by accident. It was trained. Research in developmental psychology shows that emotional suppression often begins in childhood. Maybe you grew up in an environment where emotions were dismissed, where crying was met with phrases like, "Stop being so dramatic," or "I'll give you something to cry about." Perhaps you were the oldest child who had to be strong for your siblings, or maybe you learned early that your feelings made others uncomfortable. Psychologist Janice Webb calls this childhood emotional neglect, not because anyone was necessarily cruel, but because your emotional responses weren't validated or welcomed. So you learned to compress them, to manage them internally, to become your own emotional container. And here's what's critical to understand. This adaptation was intelligent. You weren't being weak when you learned to hold your tears. You were surviving. You were reading your environment and adjusting accordingly. But what served you then might be costing you now.
When you consistently hold back tears, you're not just suppressing sadness, you're suppressing information. Tears contain more than water and salt. They're biochemical messengers carrying emotional data your body needs to process. When you block them, that emotional data doesn't disappear, it gets stored. Therapist and researcher Hilary Jacobs Hendel explains that unexpressed emotions don't evaporate. They accumulate in what she calls the triangle of conflict, buried beneath layers of anxiety, defensiveness, and sometimes physical symptoms. This is why people who hold their tears often experience chronic tension in their jaw, neck, and shoulders, persistent tightness in their chest, frequent headaches or migraines, digestive issues with no clear medical cause, a feeling of numbness or disconnection from themselves. Your body is literally holding the tears you won't cry, and over time, this creates what psychologists call emotional constipation, a backlog of unfelt feelings that manifests as physical discomfort, irritability, or a pervasive sense of being stuck. There's also a relational cost. When you've spent years training yourself not to cry, you often extend that to not showing vulnerability at all. You become the person everyone leans on, but who never leans back. You're compassionate with others' pain, but ruthless with your own. And here's the painful irony. You're not protecting yourself from being hurt. You're isolating yourself from being fully known.
Not everyone who holds back tears does so for the same reasons. Let me walk you through the different profiles. The protector. You learned early that your emotions burdened others, so you became hypervigilant about not dumping your feelings on anyone. You hold your tears because you genuinely believe your pain isn't worth troubling others with. You're the friend who asks how everyone else is doing, but deflects when they ask about you. The controller. For you, tears represent loss of control, and control is safety. Perhaps you grew up in chaos, or perhaps you experienced situations where vulnerability was weaponized against you. Holding tears isn't about strength, it's about maintaining the one thing you can manage, your own reactions. The performer. You've built an identity around being capable, together, unshakable. Tears don't fit the narrative you've constructed about who you are. You might even feel like crying would betray the version of yourself you've worked so hard to present to the world. The analyzer. You intellectualize emotions rather than feeling them. When pain comes, you immediately shift into problem-solving mode. You dissect why you feel the way you do, but you don't actually feel it. Tears seem illogical to you. What's the point when thinking through the issue is more productive? The truth is, you might recognize yourself in more than one of these profiles, and that's okay, because emotional suppression is rarely about one single cause. It's a pattern woven from multiple threads of your history, your temperament, and your learned beliefs about safety. If you're someone who holds your tears, I want you to hear this. You are not broken for being the way you are. The strength you've developed in containing your emotions has likely helped you survive situations others couldn't. Your ability to function while carrying pain is extraordinary, but you don't have to carry it alone forever. The person you're protecting by holding back your tears isn't everyone else. It's often a younger version of you who learned that crying wasn't safe. And that version of you deserves to know you're not there anymore. You're here now, and here might be different. Healing doesn't mean crying at everything. It means giving yourself permission to cry at anything and trusting that you won't shatter if you do. Because the truth is, the tears you're holding aren't making you stronger. They're making you heavier. And maybe, just maybe, it's time to set that weight down. Not all at once, not perfectly, but gently, in moments when you feel safe enough to let one tear fall, and then another. That's not falling apart. That's finally coming back together.
If this resonated with you, you might also want to watch our future videos, so make sure to subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.